Support for WBFO and What's Next comes from our members and from Health Foundation for Western and Central New York, where racial and socioeconomic health equity are prioritized. Learn more about building healthier neighborhoods at hfwcny.org.
I'm Jay Moran.
I'm Bridget Jaipal Valenza.
I'm Thomas O'Neill White.
We need to get together and let our voices be heard.
This is What's Next, a dedicated hour to have important conversations about the issues facing the marginalized and underrepresented communities of Western New York and Southern Ontario.
If we're going to have some real healing, we've got to have space to tell some uncomfortable truth.
What's Next continues our mission to discuss race,
equity,
and the common concerns of Buffalo's East Side and beyond.
In the suburban area, everywhere, we must work and teach our children.
This is Jillian Hanesworth with What's Next. I'm here today with the legendary Jay Moran and Mr. Garnell Whitfield. How you doing today?
I'm well. How are you? Thank
Good.
you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being with us.
Absolutely.
How was your holiday, your Thanksgiving?
It was wonderful.
Yeah.
You know, we spent holiday at home with family. We had some relatives coming from out of town. So we, ate, fellowshipped, and had a wonderful time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad you had a good holiday. So some of the listeners, they may know you, they may not. So let's talk a little bit about how they may know you. So you are formerly the fire chief?
Fire commissioner.
Yeah,
fire commissioner in Buffalo, retired in 2017, 34 years with the Buffalo Fire Department. So I've worked all over the city, gotten to know many of the residents of this community, of this city, and I'm thankful for having had that opportunity.
Yeah. What were some of your responsibilities as the fire commissioner?
Basically to manage all emergencies within the city of Buffalo, whether natural or man-made emergencies. We had the Bethlehem Steel fire that happened outside the city of Buffalo, but within our region, we worked at. It took 11 days to put that fire out. We had the 7 feet of snow in South Buffalo. We've had many maladies, crises within the city of Buffalo that we've had to respond to, and among them, fires in people's residences, which is a crisis for them, obviously. That's what we have. That's what we did over the course of my career: respond to emergencies and the needs of this community selflessly. Over the entire breadth of this city.
Is there anything that you wish you could have done while you were commissioner that you didn't do or couldn't do?
Well, I wish I could have kept people's houses from burning. I wish I could have kept the 7 feet of snow from falling. I wish I could have kept accidents from happening, people from dying. I wish I could have done all of those things, but not having that power. That power not being vested in me, we did what we could as a department to mitigate the impact of those things as they happen to all of us.
Yeah. And logistically, you did budgets and things
we
like
had,
that?
yes. So we had like a $59 million budget, millions of dollars in federal and state grants that I oversaw and administered. We had a significant budget, and we had to address the needs of the department in terms of equipment. Was fortunate enough to be able to replace virtually all of the equipment, all of the fire trucks, and that within the Buffalo Fire Department over the course of my career. We introduced EMS in a way that hadn't been done before within the city of Buffalo. We upgraded the level of response from the Buffalo Fire Department to this community by going from first response capacity to EMT, emergency medical technician. Everybody was upgraded in the department. And so we had the same certifications in the Buffalo Fire Department that were held by persons working ambulances for the private ambulance companies in the city. We introduced online training and learning. We did a number of things to develop specific responses to active shooter, to water related rescues and all those kinds of things. So I'm very, very happy about having done those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you retired from that role?
Yeah, I retired in 2017, June of 2017. I was retired for a month, and the governor called, and I took a job as the Assistant Commissioner of Homeland Security for New York State. So I covered the western part of New York State, Erie County, all of the counties western part of the state, western New York, and the Finger Lakes. Yeah.
Wow. So you went from working in the city within the Brown administration to working with the state.
Yes.
How was that transition?
It was different.
Yeah.
Biggest thing was the territory and the expansiveness of my response, district or whatever. So we responded all over the state, the western part of the state. But then there were times when emergencies happened in other parts of the state that we also had to respond to. So it was much different in terms of that. Again, in Buffalo Fire Department was much more focused. In terms of what our responsibilities were, a much smaller community comparatively speaking. When we start talking about responding to these other counties and these other parts of the state, now we're talking about other governments interacting one with the other, and that was a challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't know that about you. So you just been out here.
Been out here.
Putting in the work.
Been out here for some time. Yes. Yes. It's 40 years as a first responder, as a public servant. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Whitfield, first, again, thanks for being with us, of course. But you're running for mayor.
Yes,
Mayor
sir.
of Buffalo.
Yes, sir.
I guess the simple softball question is why?
Why? Because I think that my experiences have led me to this moment. We sit here on the precipice of a crisis in the city of Buffalo. I've had the opportunity to work, as was just said, across many different governments and states, and have seen much in my travels. Buffalo is very unique in terms of its needs, in terms of what it's gone through in the past and what it's facing in the future. I believe that the things that I've done over the course of my career, over the course of my life, have prepared me for this moment, and I believe I have something to give in terms of leadership for the city of Buffalo in times like these.
Of course, you came out of your promotion came during the Brown administration, if I'm not to fire commissioner, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. How do you assess the Brown administration right now? Because this is going to be the first time that we don't have a sitting mayor running for re-election in many, many years here, obviously. So how do you view that period for Buffalo?
I have a bit of a myopic view. I was the commissioner of fire. I'm very proud of the service that I rendered during that time. And there's some other good things that happened during the course of the Brown administration. I don't know that I need to, analyze whether it was impactful or whether it was good or whether it was bad. I believe that the reality of this moment and where we are right now is what I'm dealing with, and I'm focused on the future. Yeah.
What is the reality of this moment?
We're in a crisis. Well, we're in a crisis of leadership. But as you said, Jay, for the first time in many, many years, there's an open seat. Even though somebody sits there now, there's an open seat in City Hall, and that creates an opportunity. And what we have to ask ourselves is, do we want more of the same, or do we want to move in a new direction? I believe that, I can lead the city in a new direction, one that is empathetic, one that is responsive to the needs of all, and one that is caring and loving and honest and open. And I believe that's what people want. And so there's a clear choice to make. And I'm going to rely on the voters of this community to do that.
It's interesting to hear about voters, because the reality is also, and you're, I'm sure, a student of city history. Mm-hmm. The Democratic primary is probably going to determine who is going to be the next mayor. And there are a lot of different voting pockets inside the city of Buffalo, but for the most part, the primary turns out a very low turnout. Mm-hmm. So turnout's going to be a big part of this.
Sure.
And one constituency that has come to mind is the city workers, the city workforce. Mm-hmm. Here we are, as you said, a crisis of maybe leadership, but also, there's all sorts of talk about financial difficulties coming up for the city. So let's talk to the city workforce right now, what they're going to see if you are in that mayor's office.
Well, first of all, I want to thank them for the wonderful commitment that they have to this community. I believe we have committed and very talented workforce within the city of Buffalo. I've worked with many of these people. I know their dedication is, and I know what their frustration is. And I believe that we can galvanize them and we can provide the kind of leadership that would allow them to prosper and to grow and to give their best to this community. And I believe that there's an opportunity here. Yeah.
Frustration. I mean,
yeah, sure.
I'd love to hear a little bit more about that because, like you said, this is something that you've been part of for a long time. I'd like to hear more about
Well, I mean, whether it's me or whether it's them, I'm no different than them in my position. There's a certain amount of frustration with not being able to do the things that you think you can and should do on behalf of the residents of this community for whatever reason, whether it's budgetary constraints, whether it's for politics, no matter what the reason is. When you're in a position of leadership or in a position of authority, a position of influence, and can't give of your best in that position, then there's frustration. And so what we want to do is to provide an opportunity for people to grow beyond their current circumstances, beyond their limitations, and beyond those frustrations, and realize, the opportunity to be better. Realize the opportunity to fulfill their desire, which is to provide a service to the residents of this community. And I think that that's just based on leadership.
And to that, though, I like that idea about growing. It has a nice sound to it. At the same time, do you have in mind how you can go about doing it? Like you were the fire commissioner, so you understand about that.
I mean, so inherent in all of us are our talents, our gifts in all of us. As a leader, my job would be to pull those out and to allow people to grow in a way that would develop those strengths and eliminate the weaknesses and address those weaknesses within each of us as a human being. I think that that's what we all want in our careers and our jobs, in the service that we give to this community, no matter where we work or live at. We all want to grow beyond our current limitations. And I think that if we see people's potential rather than limited to what we see, their current circumstances, we see beyond that moment. People saw that in me. They saw what I could be. They saw the potential in me and they supported me. And that's what allowed me to grow. And that's what everybody, I think, needs. And as a leader, I think we can provide that not only to the city of Buffalo workforce, but to all residents of this community.
And it sounds like you have a concept in mind of being maybe a hands-on mayor, for lack of a better term.
Yeah. Well, listen, as a fire commissioner, I've been in many positions of leadership in the fire department before I got to be the commissioner. I've never asked anyone to do that which I'm not willing to do. And so I believe that that's the job of the mayor, is to lead by example, not to direct and ask people to do things that you're not willing to do. So I have no problems with jumping in and working shoulder to shoulder with the residents of this community to bring about the changes that we all want to see.
We're here with Garnell Whitfield. I'm Jay Moran, along with Jillian Hanesworth on What's Next. And one of the reasons why we're even here in this room on this show right now, unfortunately, are the events of 5/14/2022. It brought, obviously, a huge personal loss for you, but also the community. It seemed, and I'm going to ask you for your impressions about this, and Jillian, maybe you can chime in as well. There was an initial outpouring toward the east side, toward the issues around the east side. Here we are over 2 years later. Do you feel that outpouring has turned into action for that community?
No, not at all. And that's one of the reasons that I'm doing this. The truth of the matter is that Buffalo is much different than other communities. I've been around the country in many of the communities where, violence, mass violence has occurred and other maladies have occurred. And I've watched those communities grow together, work together to address the trauma and the grief that befell them, but not only to do that, but to grow beyond that and to turn that into something positive. I don't believe that that's happened in Buffalo in the way that I would be satisfied with, and I hope nobody else would be satisfied with it either.
So what do you think you could say to the community to assure safety, and not just safety as it pertains to acts of violence? Like, we know that's one thing, but just the safety that there is space in Buffalo for me to grow, for me to want more for myself and reimagine the way my local government functions for me.
Yeah, well, you said a lot there, Jillian. And so, safety is an issue. So there's some things I believe, these are things that we all have in common, I believe. These are things we can coalesce around rather than focusing on our differences. Everybody wants to be safe, live in a safe community. And we talk about safety, we're not just talking about public safety. Sure, we need police, fire, and EMS. We need all of those things. We need to, to mitigate the gun violence in our communities. But we're talking about lead paint also. We're talking about drinking water. We're talking about all of the things that would render your community safe. That's safety, okay? And we need to be secure. People want to be secure in their communities. So, you want to feel safe. You want to feel secure. You want to have a home that you can call home and be proud of. You want a job that allows you to take care of your family and pay for that home. That gives you security. That allows you to be comfortable and to dream. Okay. You want that, you want your children to be educated. You want to feel like they're getting what they need to grow and to reach their full potential. You want to be informed, by your government and by each other. You want to know what's going on. You want honesty. You want transparency. You want those things, right? You want all of those things. You want to be empowered, right? You want to be given power, not taken from you. You want to be empowered, right? That's what government should be doing. And you want to be engaged. We want you to be engaged, whether you want to be or not. We want you to be engaged. We need you to be engaged. You talked about the low turnout. That's because people have lost hope. They've been disenfranchised and lied to and led astray for so long that they've just given up. They only focus on just getting through the day. They can't plan for a future. They don't have a future in this current environment. And so our job is to build trust with people, to build trust between government and the residents of this community, between each other, between the different organizations with this community. And that will allow us to hope again and to dream again and live aspirationally. And that's what's not happening in Buffalo. That's what needs to happen for us to grow beyond our current circumstances.
Well, you mentioned housing, and, our former mayoral administration, the Brown administration, seemed to lean really heavily on developers and knocking down houses to build buildings. It seems like the city is kind of hoarding hundreds of properties. So how do you plan on keeping Buffalonians in Buffalo if there is an impending housing crisis, but the city owns all of these houses that nobody lives in?
Yeah, there's again within the things that we just talked about, empowering and all those things. It's about there are models all over this country where communities have addressed the issue of affordable housing by partnering together. There are land banks that have been created. There are communities where the residents have a vested interest in the development that comes into their community, and they invest literally in those developments and receive dividends thereof, and have ownership and take ownership. So there's all kinds of different models within this country, within the world, that we can look to develop a model that's specific and most useful for Buffalo. And that may vary even by communities, but those opportunities exist. And I think we should be paying attention to what's happening all around us, and getting the best of those things and bringing them in, and working to develop that capacity here in Buffalo.
Yeah, and it sounds like you have a lot of different specific examples regarding housing ideas. I mean, we're just in the early stages of your mayoral campaign. Mm-hmm. At the same time, that's going to be something that's going to be asked for specifically. How can it work in Buffalo? Because I think, as Jillian spoke to the frustration, housing shortages, the city owning lots of abandoned lots.
We've got over 7,000 vacant lots in the city of Buffalo. I mean, that presents an opportunity for growth. How those lots are managed presents an opportunity to grow. So I think that, if your community has vacant lots in it, then you should have something to say about how that lot is developed and what goes on that lot. How you develop that community. We talked about developers. Developers should not just be developing buildings. When you talk about development, we're talking about people. We're talking about many other things other than a building. You should not be allowed to build something in a community that is not for and it does not support that community. And so when we talk about development, what's wrong with them also developing capacity within that community? For people to participate in the building of that structure, of those structures. And maybe they don't have the requisite skill sets now, but when we talk about partnering with the Buffalo Board of Education and other entities within our community, we create opportunities for people to learn those skills and to develop capacity so they can attain these jobs in the future. If not today, then in the future. And everything we do today should be supportive of our future. And so we got to look at this thing holistically.
Sure.
These are not one-off projects. These are not just meant to just plop this here and then move on to the next one. How do these things sustain and maintain and create opportunities within the lives of the residents of those communities?
At the same time, again, without having to be or making it be too awfully specific on a housing plan, but it does sound, like you said, holistically, there needs to be a change, not only in attitude, but there are going to have to be legal groundworks, it sounds like to me, within the city government.
Absolutely. There's zoning issues. There are all kinds of issues we have to deal with in order to facilitate this, but none of them are impossible. None of these things, when you do these things singularly and by themselves, then they don't have the impact that they could have. And so we have to change. In some cases, we just have to enforce and adhere to the laws that are on the books, the policies, whatever they are, that are supportive of this idea. And in other cases, we have to develop new ones. And there are in some cases, we're going to have to eliminate laws that are a hindrance to this and are not in our best interest, that were created for another time. And we should not still be following that same path because we're on a different path now. And so we have to look at those things. Again, we have to look at this thing broadly, I think. Instead of just focusing on one thing, all of these things need our attention. But how do they all interconnect and interact one with the other?
And you did mention lead when we were talking about safety overall. And lead remains an issue in the city of Buffalo, though we've known about its dangers for decades.
Right.
Specifics about how you might want to address that?
Well, first of all, by making all of these things are addressed by first making them a priority. Simple as that. When you make things a priority, then they get addressed. Okay, they've not been a priority. Or they've been lowered in terms of where they were on that list. But that's health and safety. That's lead in our city causes permanent damage to our children, to all of us. That's got to be a high priority. We've got to address that. I know there's a lot of money coming down federally to address the lead pipes that we still have. We still have many lead pipes in our community. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of money coming down for that. That's got to be managed. And that's got to be done and mitigated and dealt with as quickly as possible. But we have to also do the inspections and the things within these older homes in that, where there's lead paint, are still impacting our children in that. And so this is going to have to be a priority of our administration. We're in part of public safety. Simple as that.
We're with Garnell Whitfield. I'm Jay Moran, along with Jillian Hanesworth. There's more to come. This is What's Next on WBFO.
Hey, educators. You've been asking for it, and it's here. Reading Rainbow Stories is ready to help your students stay on track. Each story is paired with activities to help students strengthen cross-curricular skills, such as math and business in Lemonade for Sale.
Let's keep track of our sales.
Science and health in Germs Make Me Sick.
Usually, you'll feel better after a day or two.
Thanks.
But if you don't, you should see a doctor.
And history in Following the Drinking Gourd.
One of the worst things about slavery is that families were separated. Fathers, mothers, and children were oftentimes sold to different people.
Check out the new Reading Rainbow Stories collection on PBS Learning Media today to help your students stay on track.
This is Jack Cruiser with the scoreboard on WBFO. Listen during Morning Edition and All Things Considered each Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for the latest on pro matchups and college rivalries, as well as standout local athletes from Western New York and Southern Ontario. Want more? Listen to a longer version of the scoreboard at WBFO.org or wherever you get your podcasts.
You're listening to What's Next, our place to discuss the important issues of our communities of Western New York and Southern Ontario. We want to hear from you. Click on the Talk to Us option in the WBFO app, and we will work to get your questions or comments on the air. Do you have a story or concern that we should be addressing? Email us using whatsnext@wbfo.org. Together, we'll have the conversations that are needed. This is WBFO, your NPR station.
Welcome back to What's Next on WBFO. This is Jillian Hanesworth. I'm here with Jay Moran and with Mr. Garnell Whitfield. So a little bit earlier, we were talking about frustrations and different voter demographics. So I want to talk a little bit about my specific demographic.
Okay.
I am a 32-year-old Black woman who was born and raised on the east side of Buffalo. We know from the work of Dr. Henry Louis Taylor that in over 33 years, there's been no economic growth for Black people in the city of Buffalo. I've never seen my community grow economically together. We have people who make it out, you know, but as a community, nothing has changed. So a lot of my peers are very cynical when it comes to voting. What's the point? Nothing's changed. I've never seen anything different. So what do you say specifically to that demographic of voters who have never gotten the opportunity to even imagine growth because we've never seen it?
So this goes back to what we were already talking about, Jillian. We talk about, trust. We talk about hope. We talk about being able to dream beyond our current circumstances. And persons your age, are a great example of having lived their whole life in a place where no significant change has occurred for the good. Now, there has been significant change for the bad. Okay, things have gotten worse. Nothing sits still. So things have gotten worse. And so that creates this opportunity, though, to speak to this group, to speak to persons such as yourself in a way that builds trust and builds hope. And that's not going to happen overnight because it took these 32 years or it took however long it took for people to become cynical and to lose hope. So it's going to take some time to build that relationship of trust, and where people can have faith in the systems that, that we're using in that. It's going to take some time. So I'm not naive to think it's going to happen overnight. But I do believe that over time, just as they have become cynical, they will become, hopeful. And that is, we have to do that work every day. We have to, tell the truth. We have to acknowledge where they are, where they've been, what has happened, that they have been lied to, that they have been disenfranchised intentionally, that these things in our community are not happen chance. They've been perpetrated by a system that was designed to steal their dreams, quite frankly. We have to acknowledge that. That's not to as a non-starter. And by doing that and saying, we're going to do different now. This is a new day. This is a new opportunity, and I think that over time, these people will begin to trust. They will begin to grow in ways that they haven't. And the community also will begin to grow. And you will reap the benefits and the rewards of that trust, of that relationship with government and with each other. Because it's not just between you and government. It's between you and your neighbor. And we have to build that. We have to rebuild all of those things. When you take what people need from them, and they can only focus on what they need today, They don't have time to care about you. You know what I'm saying? They don't have time to love you and to be empathetic and to do all those things. They see you as competition. They see you as part of the problem. And they set their sights on you rather than this larger issue and these larger things and these people and these systems that have intentionally impoverished them, intentionally stolen their generational wealth. They don't focus on those things. They only can focus on what's right in front of them, and that's each other. And so we have to break down those walls and build bridges between us as individuals, as human beings, you know, no matter how we look, no matter where we come from, no matter who we love, you know what I'm saying? No matter where we work, no matter what we have or don't have, and see the humanity in each of us and work together. And work together to build the world that we, you know, that cares about all of us.
Yeah. So do you have or plan to create an agenda specifically for the Black community?
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. Listen, you know, if you, maybe this is a goofy analogy, but if you cut your arm, you don't put a Band-Aid on your knee, right? The East Side is in need. Is in crisis, is in need. That has to be a focus of my administration. I make no apologies for that. But what's good for the East Side is good for the North, South, and West Sides too. You see, none of us can reach or attain, you know, that place, you know, that beautiful place that, you know, we should be in and we want to live in without all of us being better. And so, by focusing on the East Side, it's going to help the whole city grow. And that's actually where the most opportunity actually is on the East Side, because that's where the prairie land is. You know what I'm saying? That's where the opportunity is to build this new city, this new hope. That's where it is. And it's infectious because once we do that, it's going to permeate all other aspects of the city. Yeah.
When it comes to the East Side, and big part of city government, of course, is the police department. I'm sure you have your own opinions on you know, the relationship between the community and the police department here in the city of Buffalo, but we've done some fairly extensive reporting about tickets or people driving while Black in Buffalo, and how the likelihood is that you're going to get pulled over far more frequently if you're Black in Buffalo and
in America.
But we're talking about the city that we all are in right now, and of course you want to lead. There's been talk about having a citizens review board of the police with some sort of teeth involved in it, and I'm wondering where you sit on that, because to me it sounds as if you know you want to build this trust, and you know I hear your message. At the same time, that's an institutional block right now, I think, for people. And you can dispute me if I'm wrong about that, but I'm just wondering about that issue for you.
A citizens review board. What's wrong with that? I mean, bottom line is, if you're doing what you're supposed to do, if you're meeting the needs of your community and you are adhering to the oath that you took to serve and protect, and do it equitably across the city, then what's wrong with people seeing what you're doing? What's wrong with that? And as a matter of fact, why wouldn't the people have something to say about how they're policed or how the police work? The people are paying their salaries. The people hired them. Okay. They work for the people. And so we get this whole thing, everything's upside down. Whether you're a firefighter or a police officer, you're a public servant, or a mayor, you are a public servant. You work for the people, period. And so anything that allows the people to participate, you know, in their own protection or in their own, you know, support, I see nothing wrong with that. As a matter of fact, that's the only way it should be.
And just to chime in, we did formally have a police advisory board in the city of Buffalo that was ran by citizens. And around 2020, that advisory board was disbanded by our local city government with the assurance that something else that was more effective would be put in its place, but we haven't seen that happen yet.
And so I don't know whether in fact, you know, that advisory board that was disbanded, needed to be disbanded, whether it was functioning in a way that it needed to be, but certainly something else should be in its place, should have been in its place. And so, again, it's about being transparent. And we are, we have to understand that what we're talking about is a paradigm shift. We're talking about changes, just basic changes. We all understand, if you know your history, you know where police came from. You know where they came from. You know how they were developed over time. And in truth, they were never really designed to protect and to serve all of us equitably. And that was by design. And that's not a knock on the current modern day police forces. That's what they inherited. They inherited this system. They inherited these things and these ideas that are inherent in policing across America. And so we have to address that, and not in a judgmental way, but in a way that says that's not working for us. That's not who we need you to be. You work for us. And I think the people have to be more assertive in what they require and what they demand from their government, from their institutions, and not be passive and acquiesce their authority and their power over to others, whether they be representatives of their districts or whoever it is. The people have to be, and that's why we want people engaged. That's why we want people, these low voter turnouts. It's people who are hopeless. And, it's people who have been abused by the police or by the systems generationally. And so they don't see a reason to be involved or engaged because nothing's changing. We have to implement changes. And that starts with electing me mayor.
How do you go about, so once you're mayor, then you can, obviously that's part of what you can start to do. You can make big changes, small changes at the city hall. But between now and June, though, you have to get this message to voters. Right. Back to a little bit what Jillian talked about alienation. Talk about how you're going to go wherever you have to go, where you plan to go to get that message out.
First of all, there's no place in this city that I've not been and won't go. That's my record of service to this community, to this city. I'm not limited geographically. I'm not limited by my ethnicity, by my faith. I'm not limited by any of those things. I speak to people directly, and I intend to do that across the city. I'm going to knock on doors. I'm going to go to meetings. I'm going to go wherever people want me to be, wherever I need to be to get my message across. And I believe that I have lived a life of service, and it goes before me. I believe that, and I believe that there's a lot of people that already know that. And those who don't, we'll speak to them directly.
We're talking with Garnell Whitfield. Mr. Whitfield, of course, the former fire commissioner here in the city of Buffalo, running for mayor in 2025. It's upon us, another mayoral election. Lots of questions here, and you brought up about transparency and accountability, which I think is, again, this is just one person's viewpoint, but it seemed like at times it was a big frustration for people with City Hall. And again, we talked about this is a new day. So how can we go about having a new day of accountability, a new day of transparency at City Hall? What can we do?
Again, no matter what we're going to talk about here today or in the days to come, when these things are made a priority, when these things are not lip service, when you live a transparent life, when you open up your heart and your soul and your mind or whatever, and you speak honestly and openly and you share those things with people, whether they're politically correct or not, that's transparency. And I have no problem doing that. And I would certainly want my administration to do the same thing. And so we have nothing to hide. We have everything to gain by being transparent, because that's how you build trust. That's what we're after. We're after trust, the trust of this community. And that's how you facilitate change, by getting the community engaged and supportive of the things that you're doing, not doing things contrary to what the community wants and believes is in their best interest on behalf of a few. And so that's transparency 101. I just believe that people will appreciate that. That's what people want. They don't want to be lied to. People can handle the truth. They really can. You know what I'm saying? They can. If you're honest with them, you provide the information that they need to make good decisions and to understand what's going on in their lives, in the lives of their community. That's all they ask you to do. That's not too hard. I don't believe that's hard.
So, not as the former fire commissioner, but just as a regular citizen of the city of Buffalo, from your viewpoint, has there been traditionally a transparency problem in the city of Buffalo?
Absolutely. I mean, there's been a transparency problem from since time immemorial. Absolutely. Absolutely. There's always been a desire to keep the truth from people, to pretend that you're something that you're not. There's always been that. I mean, that's always been the case, you know. And sometimes, you know, life may require you to not tell the whole story, you know, if it jeopardizes something greater. You know, there's sometimes, you know, having worked in Homeland Security and these other areas, there are times when the truth cannot be told because it would cause a bigger problem than you're facing, you know. But you don't do that to deceive people. You don't do that to trick them and to, you know, and to do something that's contrary to their best interest. Sometimes people have to be protected because you love them, because you care about them, and because the truth would cause a problem, again, that's larger than the one you're actually facing. And so, you know, in order to get people where they need to be, sometimes, you know, you don't want to scream fire in a theater. You know what I'm saying? If there is one, you want to move people out orderly. You want to do those things in a certain way. And so it's how you present the truth sometimes requires you to, you know, to nuance it or whatever. But at the end of the day, being honest and being open, I think, is always the best policy. There is a hard truth, though, that, again, maybe we're not hearing all the truth about is about the financial situation in the city of Buffalo. Yeah. Lots of estimates being out. A lot of people don't want to talk about it. Mm-hmm. But you know, there's going to be something there waiting for you if you're elected into office. So that hard truth, that is going to need to be addressed. It's going to have to be addressed. Absolutely. And what would you see as obvious ways of dealing with it? Well, by first of all, getting a handle on it and understanding where we are, because I don't think anybody really understands that now because of what you just said. I don't think the truth has been told in all instances, or we don't completely understand how this begat that and this is connected to this and that. You know, using the ARPA funds to mitigate the immediate issue here in the city, but that's been done since time immemorial. Also, robbing Peter to pay Paul. You know what I'm saying? That's been done. And so all of the groups that were used to qualify City of Buffalo to get those fundings, to get that money, all those groups now will not get that funding. So there's this ripple effect. Okay, the elephant in the room is this budget, is this deficit, right? What about all the other things in this community that money was intended for? What about that impact? You know, what about all of the things that are not going to happen because of this now? Somebody is accountable for that. And, you know, so this is not rocket science. You got a debt, so you're going to take this money and use it for it. That's what's been done all along. That's what continues to happen. You know, because there's always these caveats that under, you know, in a crisis or whatever, you know, the city can do this or do that. You know, one of the things I've been talking to the federal government about, you know, in my travels or whatever, I'm saying, like, you know, when you assign monies, when you distribute monies to communities, to local communities, there has to be continued oversight to make sure that money goes and meets the needs of the people who it was intended to meet. Because once it gets to the local level, not just in Buffalo, but across the country, people get creative. You know, people find ways to redistribute or to redirect that funding. And it does not have the impact and it does not meet the needs of the people who it was intended to meet. So those are things that I think are important. You should not be able to do that arbitrarily because you created this crisis. It just didn't happen. It's not some organic thing. It was created intentionally. If not intentionally, it was still created by missteps and mistakes along the way. And so we have to acknowledge that, and we have to account for that. And at a certain point, it's going to be some tough sledding. That's just the truth of the matter. And we have to find ways to swallow our pride, and our egos and all those other things. To be honest, to be open. This is where we are, and these are the steps it's going to take. And there's going to be some pain. We'll have to distribute that. It should not be borne by those with the least. We got, reassessments going on now where, I have a house on the east side. I have one on the north side. My house on the north side taxes went down. My house on the east side taxes went way up. Mm-hmm. There's something wrong with that. There's something wrong with that.
We're talking with Garnell Whitfield here on What's Next. We'll be back with our final minutes with him right after this.
Our mission at Buffalo Toronto Public Media is to serve our local community. And on WBFO, we do that by keeping you informed and connected to your community, whether it's by hearing from a local Black poet about what it was like to move from the inner city to the suburbs on What's Next.
So that emotional change with that culture change combined let me realize that basketball and being physical wasn't enough. I needed a way to figure out my emotions. So the first poem I wrote in the cafeteria of Sweet Home Middle School was Outcast.
Or it's exploring the East Side Garden Walk.
It's wonderful that we're seeing engagement in beautification and sharing gardens, because we believe that we can build more vibrant communities by sharing our gardens, by sharing our stories, and by building real connections between people. We came through as neighbors and cleaned this space out and began plot by plot putting plants in.
This is public media.
You're listening to What's Next, our place to discuss the important issues of our communities of Western New York and Southern Ontario. We want to hear from you. Click on the Talk to Us option in the WBFO app, and we will work to get your questions or comments on the air. Do you have a story or concern that we should be addressing? Email us using whatsnext@wbfo.org. Together, we'll have the conversations that are needed. This is WBFO, your NPR station.
This is What's Next on WBFO. I'm Jillian Hanesworth, joined by Jay Moran. We are here with the former fire commissioner, Garnell Whitfield, who will be running for mayor in 2025. So we're talking a little bit about budgets. So as the fire commissioner, you had the second largest budget line in the city. Mm-hmm. The first is the police. The police have the largest budget line. We know that when the police commit acts of misconduct or abuse, they get sued by citizens. The city pays off those lawsuits. Mm-hmm. The city has paid off millions and millions of dollars worth of police lawsuits, which obviously has an impact on our city budget. City has to take out bonds, things like that, in order to pay these lawsuits. Do you think that practice is beneficial to the citizens of this community who are healing from the actual acts of misconduct, but then also seeing their home assessments rise, seeing our city enter financial crises due to the city being directly responsible fiscally for misconduct by individual officers? Yeah,
I mean, obviously that's a problem. Paying out monies for misconduct is reprehensible, first of all. The misconduct itself is reprehensible. And so we have to do a better job of, again, managing our city workers. Each one of our workers are representative of our city and, pose a certain threat, if you would, to city government and a certain liability when they act in a manner inconsistent with their job titles or inconsistent with just being decent human beings toward the residents of this community. And so that is a problem. But again, we talked about frustration. We talked about building trust. That has to be done with the city workforce also. That has to be done in the police department. And, and I know some of the things we talk about overtime, we talk about the things, and a lot of the things we're going to talk about are specific to the police department because they are the biggest department and they are the biggest portion of money spent. And they have the most contact and ability to render us safe or put us in jeopardy. That's just the truth. The same potential they have for rendering us safe, they also have that same potential to hurt and harm. And so we have to consider that. We have to manage that in a way that is respectful of their sacrifice and their service, but not over and above the residents of this community. Because at the end of the day, they're hired by this community to serve and protect this community, and that has to be their number one, mission. Period. Not to rally together as police officers, not to rally together as firefighters in the union, because the oath is bigger than the union. The oath is bigger than the uniform. The oath is sacred. The oath is to protect and serve people, and that's what they have to aspire to. And that's what we as a government have to aspire to. And so, we have to break some of the bonds that, have been built up over the years in these departments. Some of these things where it's this us against them mentality. And, it's just about me. When you take from the city and when we don't manage the resources of this community in a way that's responsible and efficient, we hurt everybody. We hurt everybody. We hurt our ability to grow. My pension, should not be such that yours is diminished necessarily. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? So there's enough for all of us. I think that we talk about shortages all the time. We talk about what we don't have. We talk about these gaping holes. Let's talk about what we do have. We have this opportunity to be better. We have this opportunity to share resources in a way that's equitable and that's fair and that's just. We have a way to do these things. Let's focus on those things. Let's focus on the things we do have. Buffalo is in a position where we talk about climatology, where we talk about any of these things. Buffalo is seen as a haven going forward in our future. Now, it's coincidentally, it was also seen that way back in the Pan Am exhibition as a place to be. First city with incandescent streetlights. Oh, it was a place that was booming, right? Do you know how hard we had, and I say we, had to work to mess that up and to destroy that, the potential of this city? But yet again, here we are, sitting on the precipice of opportunity. And my question to you is, what will we do in this moment that will afford us the things that are projected and forecast for us? And we have this opportunity to do it now. And it starts with having the appropriate leadership, that's willing to make hard decisions, that's willing to speak truth to power, and that's willing to make, changes in the way we do things. And so I think that's the opportunity. I think that's what separates me from others. And I think I'm excited about what we can be.
We're down to our last 2 minutes, Commissioner Whitfield. So we'll give it to you to utilize. Tell our listeners why they should support Garnell Whitfield for mayor of Buffalo.
I think they should support me for mayor because I represent the best opportunity for them to pursue the things that they care about. I think that I'm nothing more than a public servant and a conduit through which their dreams and their aspirations can be brought to fruition. That's how I see myself as a manager. I'm not the answer to everything, and I don't pretend to be. But I am one who believes in God and believes in the goodness of this community and the goodness of people. I operate on the principles of faith, hope, and love. And I think that those are things that all of us can aspire to. I think that all of us can agree that we want what's best for our family, for our community, without all of the bigotry, without all of the racism, without all of the disenfranchisement, with all the hurt and pain that comes with living lives, in the same way that we've always lived them here. And so I think people are looking for a way to grow beyond their circumstances, beyond their obvious circumstances, whatever they are. And even if you're doing okay, you can do better. You can be better. And isn't that what we should aspire to as human beings? To be better, to be the best people we can be. And so there's this opportunity for us to come together and to work together and do that in the city of Buffalo and be an example, a beacon for the rest of this region, for the rest of this country and of the world. 514 was an incident of global significance here. The world's still looking at us. We have an opportunity to lead, and I think it's time that we do that.
Yeah, well, thank you for joining us. Best wishes. Thank you for tuning in. This is What's Next on WBFO. I am your host, Jillian Hanesworth, joined by Jay Moran and our former fire commissioner, Mr. Garnell Whitfield.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Support for WBFO and What's Next comes from our members and from Health Foundation for Western and Central New York, where racial and socioeconomic health equity are prioritized. Learn more about building healthier neighborhoods at hfwcny.org.